Hey lady, wrong parking lot, the chicken bike drop-off is out back. Laughter echoed across the pit zone as Lucy Hart pushed her beat-up motorcycle into the lineup wearing a scuffed denim jacket and a helmet with no logo. One crash and she's done, Rick muttered. But when the girl twisted the throttle and took off, the racetrack fell silent, because what followed was something no one expected. She brought the bike to a halt near the edge of the starting grid, dust wafting around her ankles. A uniformed race coordinator clipboard tucked under one arm strolled over with a smirk. His eyes flicked toward her ancient bike, then back to her face. He gave an exaggerated sigh that said everything. She wasn't worth his time. Behind him, two men lounged against gleaming speed machines, their seats upholstered with custom leather engines polished until they gleamed under the fluorescent garage lights. One of them raised an eyebrow at Lucy's battered wheels and snorted. "You trying to audition for a yard sale, sweetheart?" He called. His buddy chimed in. "That ride looks older than the track itself." "She's not racing in that, right?" Lucy kept her gaze steady, saying nothing. She rolled her bike toward a small stretch of concrete, intending to set up her corner of the pit area. A tall woman in a neon pink racing suit sauntered past, flipping her hair with a practiced flourish. "They might let you ride with the kids' training group," she jeered. "Or hey, if you're bored after you wash out, you can wipe down my tires." The men nearby broke into cackles that echoed off the corrugated walls. Lucy's face remained impassive, though her grip on the handlebars tightened ever so slightly, knuckles whitening beneath her worn gloves. As Lucy guided the motorcycle into place, a cluster of onlookers formed a half circle around her arms, folded lips curved into derisive smiles. A teenage boy carrying an energy drink eyed her jacket. "No logos. No sponsor. No chance," he said, shaking his head. Beside him stood a middle-aged man who wore a vest covered in racing patches, a name embroidered in fancy script on the pocket. "See that brand?" he said, jabbing a thumb at Lucy's engine. "They went out of production decades ago. Spare parts are a joke. Girls either clueless or plain suicidal to bring that relic here." Another man hunched over an open toolbox, shot Lucy a glare. "You want me to fix that heap for you?" "Might take a miracle," he muttered, setting off more laughter among the crowd. Rick, the veteran racer known to dominate the Arizona Speed Fest, strolled up, next helmet perched under one arm, a cocky grin plastered on his face. He looked Lucy up and down like she was an alien who had crash-landed in the wrong dimension. "We're not hiring water girls this season," he quipped, voice low but carrying easily in the hush. "And if you wipe out, they'll need a shovel, not a medic." A wave of snickers rippled outward. Lucy glanced at Rick, then at the row of high-performance bikes, each a testament to wealth and engineering brilliance. Hers was a battered shell in comparison, paint-chipped tailpipe patched with metal clamps. She stayed silent. Rick lifted his chin as though he expected a retort. When none came, he gave a dismissive sniff and walked off, boots clacking on concrete. The crowd dispersed, the novelty of humiliating the newcomer wearing thin. Lucy set down her things in a small cluster. A canister of basic tools, an old rag, and a single spare tire she'd strapped to the back of her seat. One of the officials trudged over a handheld device for scanning bike registration. He barely glanced at her paperwork. "We'll just put you at the back of the grid," he said. "Can't risk you messing up the front runners." "That sound fair?" His tone dripped condescension. Lucy offered a short nod, unbothered by the assigned position. The official handed back her documents, muttering, "This is a race for serious riders. People pay good money to see real skill out there." Another snort. "But hey, amuse yourself. It's your funeral." A group of rough-looking bikers, Thunder Kings, known by their leather jackets stitched with a roaring skull, wandered past, sipping from paper cups. Their ringleader, a barrel-chested man with a shaved head, caught sight of Lucy's humble corner. He elbowed his companions. "Check it out. That's the toy we used to practice on when we were 12. They let out whoops of laughter. Another chimed in, "Hey, darling, you're lost. The amateur circuit is down the road. Or are you trying to set the record for slowest lap?" Lucy kept her head bowed, checking the chain tension and ignoring their catcalls. The ringleader spat on the ground near her rear tire shoulders, shaking in silent laughter. Then they sauntered off. Moments before practice runs began, Lucy wheeled her bike to the track entrance for a warm-up. A female racer wearing high-tech gear from head to toe lounged by her own sleek machine. She let her eyes flick over Lucy, then gave a mocking whistle. "Trying to be Danica Patrick, huh? I hope you're ready to swallow dust." After you spin out, you can clean the mud off my wheels. Lucy's eyebrows twitched almost imperceptibly, but she only swung her leg over the seat and settled into place. The official waved her forward, stifling a sigh as if anticipating a crash. In the stands, a few spectators nudged each other and pointed, obviously discussing her battered gear. She twisted the throttle gently, the engine coughing to life with a low rumbling sound. It wasn't powerful, but it was steady. With that, she rolled onto the track for a trial lap. The other riders revved their engines, roaring out ahead of her in a cloud of exhaust. Rick and the neon-pink racer took the lead, weaving confidently around the circuit. Lucy's bike trailed far behind, sending the pit crews into peals of laughter. She completed a slow loop, returned to the pit, then slipped off the seat. A handful of watchers stood around, exchanging smug grins. "Told you so," one said. "She can't even keep up in practice." Another nodded vigorously. "Yeah, she'll be gone by turn 1 tomorrow." Lucy parked her machine and fetched a ratchet from her canister. As she knelt by the engine casing, she caught sight of a suspicious smear of oil on her rear tire. Someone had tried to sabotage her. She paused, then wiped it away with methodical care, as though it were no more annoying than a smudge of dirt. Early evening set in, and the pit area thinned as most riders left for catered dinners and team strategy sessions. Lucy stayed behind, quietly tinkering with her bike. She pulled out a small flashlight and examined the chain, adjusting tension with painstaking precision. Now and then, the thunder of passing engines reverberated, some powerful brute giving the track another go for show. A few staff meandered about, packing up equipment or chatting about the next day's big race. One or two glanced at Lucy's old machine with pity, as if wondering why she bothered. No one approached her. She seemed content in her solitude, turning a wrench with a calm, practiced motion. A final tighten of the bolts, and she stood, wiped her hands on a rag, and left for the night without speaking to anyone. The next morning, the racetrack buzzed with energy. Engines revved, mechanics shouted orders, fans crowded the stands, and hats and t-shirts emblazoned with their favorite racers' logos. Vendors sold everything from engine oil to sizzling street tacos. The air smelled like burnt rubber, adrenaline, and money. Lucy arrived quietly, pushing her bike with the same unhurried gait. She carried no entourage. No manager accompanied her with clipboards or big talk. Just Lucy, her dusty denim, and that battered motorcycle. She found her assigned spot on the far end of the starting grid, the place for the least likely to succeed. As the final announcements blared over the loudspeakers, fans got their first full view of the day's lineup. Names scrolled across the jumbotron, each met with varying degrees of cheers. Rick, champion of the previous Arizona Speedfest, garnered huge applause. The neon-pink racer, now introduced as Lola Bell, waved to cameras as they zoomed in on her bike. Then, almost as an afterthought, Lucy's name appeared. Her photo was a grainy registration shot. Polite confusion rippled through the crowd. Nobody had heard of her, and those close enough to see her in person saw nothing but second-hand gear. A voice crackled over the speakers, and in last position, Lucy Hart, riding something we've never quite seen. A few chuckles rose from the bleachers. Engines roared to life, the riders each testing their throttles. Lucy sat on her seat, posture relaxed, gloved hands loosely gripping the handlebars. Thunder Kings lounged near the safety fence, making jokes at her expense for onlookers. "Bet she doesn't finish 2 laps," one crowed. Another elbowed his friend. "She might not even start." Rick, revving his polished beast, caught Lucy's eye and mouthed, "Hope you brought bandages." She inclined her head slightly, then dropped her visor. When the starting lights flashed from red to green, the pack blasted forward in a roar. Lucy's engine sputtered at first. The tail end of the group swarmed past her, and a wave of laughter swept the stands. A few reporters perched above the track nudged each other and pointed at Lucy's meager start. "That's got to be the earliest chokeout in Speedfest history," one joked to his colleague. Another responded, "Budget Barbie, am I right?" The cameras shifted focus to the front runners, capturing Rick and Lola Bell jostling for lead position. Meanwhile, Lucy trailed behind by a huge gap. But as lap 1 slid into lap 2, something changed. While the crowd fixated on the front of the pack, Lucy's pace began to rise. Her bike, once seemingly half dead, rattled with a new intensity. She maneuvered each corner with uncanny precision, hugging the apex in a low swoop, then accelerating out with perfect timing. One by one, she caught up to the slower riders near the back. An amateur in an all-black suit tried to block her on a turn, but Lucy slipped past in a hair's breadth, leaving him gaping at the sudden disappearance of her taillight. Another rider wearing sponsor-laden gear scowled when Lucy glided beside him parallel in the racing line before pulling ahead on the straight. It happened so fast that the commentators missed it at first. Soon, spectators noticed a flash of denim weaving through the middle ranks. They pointed in surprise, exclaiming that the no-name rider in the battered jacket was actually passing people. The cameras finally alerted swung around to catch Lucy overtaking two more racers in a single corner. Laughter gave way to murmurs. Even the scoreboard operators blinked at the times. Lucy was cutting into the leader's advantage with every lap. Gasps rippled through the stands. People leaned forward, compelled by the unlikely surge. Rick at the front thundered onward, confident of his lead. Lola Bell was inches behind, matching him for speed. They wrestled for this best racing line, each determined to claim the inside edge. Neither noticed the silent shape creeping into their rear mirrors. By the midpoint of the race, Lucy was in fourth, eyes shielded behind her visor. The crowd began to cheer in pockets, uncertain but intrigued. A hush settled as she closed in on third place, a skilled competitor nicknamed Blaze, known for top speeds. But on turn 7, Lucy shot through an impossibly tight gap, brushing the apex with perfect control, and Blaze's jaw dropped in shock as she found herself behind Lucy's tailpipe. Then came the sandstorm. A sudden gust whipped across the Arizona desert, hurling dust and grit onto the track in a golden haze. Visibility plummeted. Tires skidded. Racers yelped into their radio comms. At the far end of the circuit, the stands erupted in dismay as swirling clouds of dust made it almost impossible to see the riders. Lola Bell, spooked by the swirling grit, slowed on a crucial bend. Rick nearly collided with her, forced to brake aggressively. Engines sputtered. The entire race dynamic turned to chaos, except for Lucy, who kept her throttle steady. She leaned into the storm, reading the wind's direction, as though she had intimate knowledge of desert weather. In less than 2 corners, Lucy accelerated around Rick and Lola Bell, gliding through the dusty air with a deftness that defied logic. She maintained a stable line while everyone else struggled to keep upright. By the time the sandstorm began to subside, Lucy was in first place, her silhouette half obscured by a trailing cloud of dust. Spectators roared in disbelief. Some even stood craning their necks to see who this mystery rider was. Camera operators scrambled, trying to focus on the battered bike that now led the pack. The final lap arrived with Lucy still ahead. Rick, teeth clenched, tried everything to close the gap. Lola Bell, furious, attempted a last-ditch overtake, nearly clipping Lucy's rear wheel in a daring side-by-side. Lucy responded with a subtle flick of her wrist, pushing just enough to surge out of reach. The battered machine roared across the finish line, first engine rumbling victoriously. Silence crashed over the stadium before erupting into pandemonium. Nobody had predicted this outcome. As Lucy coasted to a stop in the winner's section race, officials hurried over dumbfounded. Camera flashes popped in rapid succession. She set the bike on its stand, dust swirling around her boots. For a moment, she didn't move. The entire audience seemed to hold its breath, anticipating what this no-name rider would say or do. Then Lucy reached up, unclasped her helmet, and slowly pulled it off. The hush that followed was absolute. The woman underneath was young, quietly elegant in a way that seemed out of place amid the grit and grease. She had the kind of calm composure that suggested she was unafraid of scrutiny, yet uninterested in it. Murmurs swept the crowd. Who on earth was she? Rick stumbled off his bike helmet, half dangling from his hand, staring at Lucy as though trying to place her face. Lola Bell pulled up next to them, ripping off her own helmet with a curse. The officials hovered, waiting for Lucy to speak. But Lucy simply stood there, posture unbowed, gazing across the track where thousands of spectators gaped at her. One man in the front row muttered, "I've seen her somewhere." "No, can't be." The rumor mill kicked into overdrive, but Lucy remained silent until an official stepped forward, microphone in hand. "Ma'am, can you please state your name for the record?" She accepted the mic, her voice steady but quiet. "Lucy Hart." A ripple passed through the onlookers. Some recognized that name from the registration list. But it still meant nothing to them. Then Rick Face Ashen took a trembling step forward. "Wait," he said, eyes searching her features. Have we met?" Because he paused, clearly dredging up a memory. Lucy held his gaze without blinking. Another official approached, scanning Lucy's bike with the number 76 painted on the side. "Hang on," he said, "is that—" "Wait a minute, your alias in Europe was Storm Rider, wasn't it?" The one who set those track records in Madrid took down the best riders in Switzerland, beat Rick at the Spanish Grand Prix 3 years ago. That was you. Gasps spread like wildfire. Photographers jostled for position, snapping pictures of Lucy's calm face. The crowd erupted into frantic chatter. Storm Rider had been an enigma in the European circuit, someone who refused interviews, raced under different pseudonyms, and disappeared whenever the press got too close. Rick's face drained of color memories colliding in his mind. He remembered losing to an anonymous competitor in Spain, remembered the humiliation of never discovering the rider's identity. Now it was her. The entire stadium seemed to inhale in one stunned moment. Before Rick could speak, an official beckoned Lucy aside. Inspectors wanted to check her bike, presumably to confirm there wasn't anything illegal at play. Lucy nodded, stepping back to let them handle it. On the big screen overhead, replay footage of Lucy's maneuvers looped her fearless passing that insane corner in the sandstorm, the final push to victory. Commentators, now in full shock mode, gushed into their microphones. "This changes everything," one said. "She's no rookie. She's legendary racing incognito. And her name is Lucy Hart, but that might not even be her real name." Rick, still shaken, removed his gloves and threw them to the ground. Around him, the other racers looked equally stunned or ashamed. The ones who'd mocked Lucy's bike stared at the battered machine with new respect, perhaps even fear. Lola Bell, breathing heavily, tried to muster some composure, but her frustration showed in clenched fists. "So you tricked us all," she hissed, though Lucy was too far away to hear. Thunder King stood at the sidelines, jaws slack. Their big talk about chicken bikes now seemed pitiful. When the inspectors finished their work, they beckoned Lucy over, pointing to various parts. Mechanics from major teams crowded around, curiosity piqued. "It's an old frame, but half the guts are new," one marveled. "Look at this custom intake. And the engine mods. It's like she built it from scratch using top-grade components from different brands." Another muttered, "The aerodynamics are genius. She's improved the airflow in a way I've never seen. The chassis might look ancient, but it's meticulously balanced." Rumors flared that Lucy herself had engineered every detail. Motorcycle brand representatives rushed forward with business cards and urgent pleas. "Join our team. Ms. Hart. We'll give you the best resources. We have an engineering department that needs your expertise." Offers piled up at her feet, some from corporations known for their mega budgets. Lucy took it all in stride. She said little, merely offered a faint nod each time someone approached. Reporters shoved microphones in her face, begging for an explanation. She stood poised, eyes flicking from one camera to the next. Finally, a race official with trembling hands ushered her to the winner's podium. She climbed the steps in her dusty jacket and jeans, battered helmet dangling at her side. Rick lingered behind, face-taut with humiliation. The crowd, once eager to mock her, roared with adulation. They demanded a speech. She was handed the trophy, a gleaming statue of a winged wheel. Camera lights glimmered in the polished metal. Lucy stepped to the mic, taking a moment to let the cheers die down. Her voice was quiet, yet it carried a certain resonance that hushed even the rowdiest sections of the stands. "Never mock someone because of their gear, their clothes, or the bike they ride," she said, each word cutting through the air. "Skill, passion, and courage aren't visible on the outside, and they don't need permission to exist." A stillness fell over the track, as though everyone absorbed the power behind that simple statement. Then applause thundered back, louder than any engine had roared all day. Under that spotlight, Rick and the Thunder Kings hesitated, each confronting their own part in the public humiliation of Lucy Hart. The big leader of the Thunder Kings stepped forward, helmet in hand, and bowed his head to Lucy in contrition. Rick exhaled, eyes downcast, and moved to the mic. His voice, usually dripping with arrogance, sounded subdued. I was wrong," he confessed, clearing his throat. Cameras drank in every second of his apology, broadcast live across local channels. "I judged you by your appearance, your machine. I should have known better. I'm sorry. And I respect what you did out there." That statement only amplified the cheers from the crowd. Lucy inclined her head in acknowledgement, no triumph or mockery in her expression. Sponsors, promoters, and engineering scouts surged toward the stage. Each wanted her signature or a handshake, hungry for the prestige that came with associating themselves to the newly revealed legend. Lucy politely received their offers, though she gave no immediate response. She let them linger, calls and business cards stacking up. Later, in a quieter corner of the pit zone, she stood next to her battered bike, running her hand along the scuffed metal. The sun dipped lower on the horizon, painting streaks of orange across the asphalt. A hush settled as the celebratory noise waned. Mechanics from other teams approached her like pilgrims seeking wisdom, peppering her with polite questions. She pointed to specific modifications she'd done, explaining in measured words how the engine thrived with a blend of old-school durability and modern enhancements. She never bragged, never boasted, merely answered with a calm surety. Off to the side, a small group recognized something else: Lucy. Hart had an aura of quiet power. She carried herself with a dignity that suggested a deeper background, one of intense discipline and possibly great wealth, though she'd never flaunted it. Some whispered that she might belong to a powerful family known in certain global circles for philanthropic influence. Others claimed she'd turned down corporate backers for personal reasons. No one dared ask her directly. The hush around her was too profound. At one point, an older man wearing a top-tier brand jacket offered her a diamond-studded patch that signified an elite sponsor's contract. Lucy touched the patch for a moment, then handed it back with a gentle shake of her head. The man nodded, perhaps understanding that she wasn't in it for the glitter or the superficial trophies. Under the overhead lights, the battered lines of her motorcycle gleamed with an odd beauty. It was a testament to her engineering skill and her refusal to conform. Reporters eventually cornered her again, searching for more revelations. They asked about the rumored racing records she'd broken in Europe, the hush-hush victories she'd snagged under aliases. Lucy neither confirmed nor denied letting the rumors swirl. When they pressed about her hidden identity, she simply turned away, gaze drifting to the racetrack where specks of dust still danced in the late sunlight. She seemed more interested in the physical reality of the circuit, its curves, its pitfalls, than in explaining herself to the media. As the day wound down, the biggest news networks concluded their coverage of the Arizona Speed Fest with the same tagline: Lucy Hart, once dismissed as a nobody, had become the new legend. Phrases like "the Ghost Rider of Arizona" and "Storm Rider Unmasked" splashed across local headlines. Internet chatter buzzed with speculation, though Lucy herself appeared unmoved by the attention. She loaded her tools into a small, unremarkable truck parked near the exit gates. A few pit workers watched wide-eyed as she prepared to leave. No fanfare, no last-minute endorsements, just Lucy slipping into the driver's seat with her battered bike strapped in the back. Rick caught up to her right before she left. He stood at the edge of the lot, helmet under his arm, shoulders tense. Some of the same men who had taunted her lingered behind him, subdued. He cleared his throat. This was a humbling day, he managed, eyes fixed on the ground. If we meet again on the track, I hope you'll let me race you for real without sabotages or mind games. Just skill to skill. Lucy regarded him quietly, then gave a short nod. There was no malice in her expression, just an acknowledgement that yes, this was how it should have been. Rick took that gesture as acceptance, stepping back to let her drive away. On her route out, Lucy slowed near a corner of the racetrack's chain-link fence. A faint memory flickered, an old photograph of her father leaning against a vintage motorcycle helmet in hand, his quiet pride in her mechanical gifts. A flash of younger days spent in secret workshops, building contraptions from discarded parts. A vow she'd made to herself never to let status or public perception define her. She tapped the steering wheel once, gaze distant, then drove onward, letting the racetrack fade into the rearview mirror. Days turned to weeks, and the story of Lucy Hart became legend. Racing forums fawned over her skill, analysts dissected her improbable victory, and big-name sponsors released official statements, each hoping she'd sign with them. People circulated rumors that she hailed from an impossibly wealthy lineage, an heiress who refused to trade her identity for shallow recognition. Others claimed she was an orphan who learned from a mysterious mentor. Some insisted she had ties to an ancient motorsports dynasty. The only common thread in these rumors, Lucy never confirmed anything. In the interim, Rick found his own reputation shaken. Fans questioned his sportsmanship, recalling how he'd mocked Lucy at the start. He faced sponsors demanding an explanation for why he'd let a so-called rookie outmaneuver him. The Thunder Kings faced their own backlash. Footage of them insulting Lucy became a cautionary tale in the racing community. Their once proud name turned into a punchline for arrogance. Lola Bell, overshadowed, vanished from the circuit for a spell, rumored to be rethinking her approach. Meanwhile, Lucy carried on in her typical hush. She turned down televised appearances, ignoring persistent requests from talk show hosts. She rejected a lucrative contract with a major European brand that wanted her to star in flashy ad campaigns. She quietly attended smaller races, sometimes as a spectator, sometimes racing under a different number, always with the same battered bike that she upgraded piece by piece. Those who recognized her gleaned that she cared more about fine-tuning her machine's performance than about the spotlight. One afternoon, at a lesser-known desert track, Lucy knelt by her bike's carburetor, making minute adjustments. A faint smell of heated metal drifted in the air. She'd just completed a test run in scorching temperatures, aiming to perfect the engine's handling under extreme conditions. In the distance, a black sedan pulled up. The driver stepping out wore a crisp suit. He approached Lucy with a respectful nod, offering a sealed envelope. She opened it to find a letter from an executive she'd known tangentially, someone who was aware of her family's status. The letter contained an invitation to collaborate on a major philanthropic project promoting mechanical engineering education for young women, especially those from modest backgrounds. Lucy set the letter aside, expression composed. She resumed her adjustments on the carburetor. The man stood there uncertainly. When Lucy finally turned to face him, she handed back the letter with a slight inclination of her head. It was unclear if she was refusing or simply letting him know she'd think about it in her own time. He bowed, sensing the quiet power that emanated from this unassuming figure, and departed without pressing the matter. Nights. Lucy sometimes sat in her sparse workshop, flipping through pages of old racing magazines or examining engine diagrams. An aged photograph hung on the wall, two faces from a time long gone, their expressions proud yet reserved. Lucy would pause in front of it, inhaling gently as though renewing an unspoken promise. She never had to say what she felt. It was evident in the way her shoulders straightened and her eyes steadied. The memory of those who came before her, who entrusted her with resources and values, propelled her forward. Not long after the Arizona Speedfest announced its next major event, rumors swirled that Lucy Hart had been personally invited to defend her title. Media outlets speculated about the rematch with Rick, who was training with renewed vigor. Others predicted Lucy would refuse, uninterested in repeating the same spotlight. Yet on the first day of open practice, Lucy appeared at the gate truck, rumbling quietly, battered bike in tow. A hush spread as she unloaded it onto the tarmac. Word spread like lightning, she's back. Some parted ways to watch her pass. This time the atmosphere in the pit zone was drastically different. Where once people sneered, now they offered nods or polite greetings. Where men had spat insults, they now spoke in hushed, respectful tones. Lucy gave them little attention, focusing on her pre-race rituals, checking tire pressure, adjusting the chain, calibrating the engine's electronics. She wore the same scuffed denim jacket, the same unbranded helmet. Her presence commanded a reverence that no gold-laden sponsor patch ever could. Rick approached with measured steps, a brand new racing suit that gleamed under the lights. He paused a foot away, uncertain. Then he extended his hand. "Good luck out there," he said. No mocking grin, no arrogance. Lucy shook his hand briefly. The tension between them was replaced by a sense of mutual respect. Thunder Kings hovered at a distance, likewise subdued. A camera crew from a local station attempted to capture a forced confrontation, but there was none. Lucy stood calmly as the race official rattled off instructions, ignoring the cameras. During that event, Lucy once again displayed masterful skill, though the race was overshadowed by an unforeseen mechanical glitch in Rick's bike that forced him out halfway. Lucy ended up placing second content to let another talented racer claim victory. She accepted the runner-up trophy with her usual poise, no disappointment crossing her face. Commentators called her performance elegant, describing how she seemed to hold back just enough, as though testing the track rather than claiming it for her own. Many believe she only gave a fraction of her true capability. In the days that followed, a wave of brand ambassadors and top-level executives descended on Lucy's doorstep with endless proposals, engineering lead roles, team sponsorships, collaboration on performance prototypes. She listened but never rushed. Some recognized her name from discreet philanthropic networks, confirming that behind her unassuming exterior lay connections and resources that rivaled the biggest corporations. A few, wise enough to sense her core values, offered projects that aligned with improving education or building safer vehicles for everyday riders. Those piqued her interest more than the hollow promise of a fame-laden contract. Eventually, Lucy quietly announced a collaboration with a smaller engineering firm specializing in eco-friendly motors. She invested time and capital, some believe from her personal fortune, and began developing safer, more efficient engines for motorbikes. She refused to plaster her face on their ads, preferring to remain a silent partner. Her only request that they focus on affordability and real-world reliability, not just performance racing. Industry insiders whispered that she was funneling her family's wealth into the project, ensuring it succeeded on altruistic terms rather than raw profit. Meanwhile, the public only saw glimpses of her racing or heard rumors that Lucy Hart's Storm Rider was building the next generation of unstoppable bikes. People who once scorned her riding an old chicken hauler now lined up for her technical expertise. Her name became synonymous with possibility, proving that determination and skill overshadow brand labels or social judgments. Even the Thunder Kings eventually admitted in interviews that they'd learned humility from her. They recounted their earlier insults and sabotage attempts with regret. As the months rolled on, Lucy's legend grew. Riders claimed her modifications saved them from dangerous crashes. Families of aspiring young racers pointed to her as an example of following one's passion without sacrificing one's integrity. She still made occasional appearances at select events, sometimes winning, sometimes placing behind those she'd helped train. People noticed how she often guided novices, giving them pointers on lines and braking techniques as though paying forward the kindness she had once been denied. She never publicly bragged. She never flaunted an extravagant lifestyle. She never felt the need to prove herself again. When the press finally caught up with her for a major interview, Lucy stood by her well-worn bike, the same battered frame now fitted with refined engineering. The reporter peppered her with questions about her wealth, her hidden family name, her philanthropic ambitions. Lucy responded with spare, measured answers, focusing more on the joys of mechanical creativity and the importance of never underestimating someone based on surface impressions. She concluded the interview with a gentle reminder. A person's worth is not in the brand they wear or the image they project, but in the passion they carry inside. Respect that, and the rest falls into place. Toward the end of that day, she walked the racetrack's perimeter fence again, reminiscent of the day she'd first left victorious. This time she paused to watch a group of young riders practicing on smaller bikes. Their laughter and determination reminded her of her own humble beginnings, the hours spent in garages, the secret tinkering to transform old scraps into something extraordinary. The wind picked up a swirl of desert sand, momentarily obscuring her from view. In that dusty swirl, she stood tall, gazing at the potential of tomorrow's racers and the legacy she would leave them. Ultimately, Lucy's story became a testament that the quiet ones, the ones mocked or sidelined for their perceived insignificance, can hold the greatest gifts. Her journey from being ridiculed in a scuffed denim jacket to revealing herself as Storm Rider shaped a new ethos in the racing world. It wasn't about the flash of sponsors or the roar of expensive engines. It was about craftsmanship, resilience, and an unbroken spirit. Time passed, but the memory of the Arizona Speedfest victory lived on. The old recordings of Lucy's battered bike outracing the best served as a reminder: never judge a competitor by outward trappings, and never assume that a quiet stance means a lack of might. Even Rick, in future interviews, acknowledged that Lucy changed the way he saw the sport and himself. The apology he made on live television became symbolic of an entire community that learned a lesson about humility and respect. In the final hush of one late afternoon, Lucy stood in an empty racetrack, her voice carried by a gentle breeze as she tested her newly modified engine. She revved it once, low, steady thunder, then eased off the throttle, letting the air swallow the sound. In that silence, the echoes of jeers and taunts from the past seemed to vanish, replaced by the memory of a crowd standing to applaud. She lifted her gaze, an unreadable expression crossing her face. Then she swung a leg over the seat, kicked up the stand, and sped off the scuffed bike, glinting like polished steel in the setting sun. Legends endure because they remind us of truths we often forget. Lucy's showed us that dignity doesn't need explanation and courage doesn't require permission. The racetrack never forgot the day a battered motorcycle thundered from last place to first, piloted by a woman who wore quiet confidence like a shield. Rick and the Thunder Kings recalled their humiliation as a turning point in their lives, a marker that changed their outlook for good. And in the hearts of those who watched, Lucy's story became a quiet, urging look deeper. Judge less, trust what someone can do rather than what they appear to be. Sometimes the simplest ride holds the greatest power. Sometimes the scuffed denim hides a brilliant mind. Sometimes silence can overpower 1,000 shouts. And in that silence, possibility roars. If you feel that hush echoing in your chest, share it with another who needs to hear it. A single nod of understanding can resonate across any finish line. After all, humility and strength deserve their victory lap long after the engines go silent.